Hey friends, it's Steven with Leviathan Snakes, and for this week's video, we are going to be talking about 3 different topics that all have to deal with reptile shows. The first one is, do you need to vend reptile shows in order to have a successful reptile business? The second topic that we are going to be discussing is, how did we do during the reptile shows that we vended throughout 2023, since we just finished up the last one that we had booked? And lastly, how was our experience vending the NARBC St. Louis Reptile Show? Anyways, we hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you do, please don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel, but let's jump in it. So starting off with St. Louis, we had signed up for the St. Louis NARBC back in the summer.
Going to the show, we went into it really excited. We packed everything up. I got a lot of new style and decor for our display. We have at all of our shows our black tablecloth, our banner, our display cases, and we usually do obviously stickers, business cards, and buckets of candy. This time I had gone to Hobby Lobby and gotten some purple tulle to put on the table, as well as some like not sheer but like shimmery fabric to put on top of that black tablecloth as kind of like a runner. We switched from our rodent bedding purple to sheets of paper that we thought looked really cool and sleek and pretty. I liked how it looked, but if your snake uses the bathroom on that paper, it is horrible. It completely disintegrates the paper, and you're like mopping the paper up. It's stuck. You have to like dig your nails under the paper to like scrape it up. Bad idea. We had talked to Troy from Best Dressed Balls at the show as we're all setting up, and he's showing how he's like, oh, we put Reptisorb liners under our paper because you don't want to put them on just paper. It'll stick to the bottom. And I thought, won't happen to us. We'll be fine. We had one snake that pooped 3 times in one day, and every single time I had to take her out and just literally with my fingernail like peel up that paper. Not doing that one again. Maybe if we got the Reptisorb, but not doing that one again without it.
So we had an 11-hour drive one way in order to get there, which means that we needed to take off on Thursday, Friday, and also on Monday in order to vend the show, travel to and from it, and all of those different things.
It wasn't a bad drive coming in. There wasn't a lot of traffic. It was a pretty easy shot, and we made it all in one day. So we got to the hotel around midnight Thursday.
In addition to the time cost that it was going to take to vend the St. Louis show, we also had table costs and hotels. So for the table cost, we ended up spending right around $600-ish in order to vend the show, specifically just to get a table, and we ended up spending about $600 for a hotel. Once you factor in gas and various food expenses, it's pretty easy to say that we are in the St. Louis NARBC for about $1,500. And while we were leading up to the St. Louis NARBC, we got a couple pre-sale animals for it. And this is really good because it can help you make sure that you're going to cover your expenses before you go to a show, especially a show that is more expensive. But I do have a caveat that we're going to get to this later on. And for those pre-sale animals, we ended up pre-selling about $3,500 worth of animals for that show before we even got there.
We got to the show, and you could start setting up around noon, maybe 11. And when we get in, we see that our booth, like we walk in and we see our booth immediately. And it is out in the hallway. So when you come into the convention center, you immediately can buy a ticket, and then you step through the doors, and it's a hallway similar to like if you go to Tinley or any of those big venues. That open area before you get into the show, that's where our booth was. And we were not super excited about that. The thought being that people might see our stuff when they first walk in, but then they go into the show because they're not going to buy something the second they walk in. They're going to go into the show and see other stuff. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if that would have been the move to stay, but there were several empty booths in the show, and the other animal salesmen out in the hall either didn't show up or they moved into the show Sunday morning. So we would have been the only animal vendors out in the hallway. The red lines out there. There was a gentleman selling knives, and I think there was like a chiropractor, and then cold-blooded caffeine. Those were all out in the hallway, as well as snake discovery. They're all out in the hallway, and we would have been the only ones selling animals. So we weren't thinking it was the best move for us. So we were able to move into the show right before it opened up, when they saw who wasn't going to be there and which booths were still open.
So once we get into the show, we are set up right across from our good friends Troy Woodruff and Margaret Woodruff from Balls and Strikes Pythons. And they're awesome people. They're up in Lugoff, South Carolina, and they're actually going to be competing in the 15 Minutes of Lame contest. So quick plug for that. If you're not doing anything December 1st, definitely come over to our channel or Chris Eaton's Snakes and the Fat Man channel in order to watch the live premiere of the 15 Minutes of Lame documentary. We are so freaking excited about it.
Some things about the show that didn't go so well for us would be like traffic past our table and sales. So, you know, there's some super kind people who came by and wanted to like learn about the animals or maybe ask questions about the snakes. Some people who were considering purchasing, but mostly people who were there in the area that were not intending to buy an animal and had absolutely no intention to buy an animal. There, in my opinion, it was probably the slowest. Maybe that's not an opinion. I think it was the slowest show we've vended. People walking past our table, there would be gaps where there was no one even in the aisle. Of course, we were competing with some really awesome people. You know, Troy from Balls and Strikes, his setup was right across from us and it's very eye-catching, very beautiful. So, you know, we were definitely competing against much bigger names being at the show. You know, Bob Vu is there, Josh Lundberg is there, just Rice Reptiles, Jersey Guy Balls, Brock Wagner. Like, there's so many cool people at the show that they're going to draw a lot of attention, which is great. I like the idea of being able to vend next to those people. But when it comes to us moving animals, we do better when we are the more eye-catching table at a show. So we do really big at smaller shows.
So because of this, I feel like that the sales were a bit slow. And on Saturday, specifically from the show, not dealing with the pre-sales, we only sold 2 animals, and both of those animals were very much pet level animals. So Sunday rolls around, and I feel like that Sunday was actually a little bit busier than Saturday was, but it also was really, really slow. And actually, we didn't sell any animals on Sunday, which was really disappointing. And I think that that might actually be the first time that we've never not sold any animals in a day that we have vended a show.
At the end of the day, I wouldn't vend the show again. It didn't make sense for us financially. It's way too far away for us to like vend that show and it makes sense for us. I don't know that I would even visit that one as a guest unless we had to miss a fall Tinley.
So altogether, I think that from a financial business aspect of it, while we did have pre-sales that like made the trip profitable, I don't really count those towards the show revenue because we didn't get those sales because of the audience or the crowd that NARBC brought into St. Louis. Instead, we had those from relationships that we had built up with other people in the community. And if there was a platform that was going to drive it, it would definitely be social media, not the fees that we paid to the show is what got that audience interested in the animals that we had available. With that caveat in, I personally feel like that the show was really, really fun, but financially it wasn't worth it. We lost money if we're looking at it from the 2 sales that we made on Saturday compared to the $1,500 that we ended up getting from it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it was a complete waste because it was really fun. We got to hang out with a lot of amazing people from the community, and I feel like at other big shows like Tinley or like Daytona, they're so busy, you don't really have the time to make like those really, really deep, meaningful connections with people that you may know online, but you haven't met in person before. So I think that that was a huge benefit of the St. Louis show is because you had a lot more quality time with the other vendors and with people who are really, really serious into the hobby. So huge shout out to everybody who was there, and we really, really appreciate and enjoyed hanging out with everybody. With all the business stuff out of the way of St. Louis, I think that the best part, the highlight of the entire show was Brock Wagner's Sunset Puzzle.
I started working with this project, I think I had the vision for it about 5 years ago, and that's when I brought a puzzle male to a sunset female. I made a clutch, I think if I remember correctly, I sold a pair and I kept the other pair for myself. I only got like 4 eggs. The female kind of took off a little slow for me. Finally was able to get a clutch from her this year. And it's kind of crazy, people didn't know this, but I hit this male sunset puzzle on 1 egg. So I had a 6-egg clutch. The other 5 eggs went bad. Total heartbreaker. I was actually, even though I hit this male, I got this, I think I found the clutch about 5:30 in the morning before I was going to work. And I was super mad and bummed out because the rest of the clutch, there was another sunset puzzle that was dead in the eggs. That really sucked. Yeah. But I was really happy that I hit this male, that I got lucky enough to get sunset puzzle for it to be a male so I can progress my project.
So once you hatched it out, once it came out, what were you expecting it to look like? What was your reaction?
You bet. My reaction was like, we all have visions in our head, and they even have morph calculators and stuff now of what things look like. And so I kind of had a little bit of a vision of what I thought it was going to look like. But when it came out of the egg, I was like, holy crap, it's super orange, it's super bright. And I couldn't believe that the puzzle was able to overpower the sunset, because as we all know, that the sunset is not only just a pattern, or it's not just a color mutation being red, it's also a pattern disruptor. And so I was actually super shocked that the puzzle was able to overpower the sunset pattern disruption and do what it did. So I was really taken away. It was amazing.
Yeah, it looks amazing. So you ended up hitting it. You posted online. What was the reaction to it?
Yeah. So before I had really posted online, I was trying to make out like kind of a strategy what I wanted to do before I came to the St. Louis show. And I thought about my birthday, which is November 6th, was before the show, that I could show it off then. And so that's kind of something I came up with in my mind. So I kept it secret for about 2.5, 3 weeks. I told some people that I sent the photo only to a fairly small circle of friends. Everybody that saw it went nuts over it and puzzled. They were loving it. And I was like, wow. So I knew I had something special. When I posted it, I wasn't really ready for the media reaction. The messages that I got, the views, I think we had over 11,000 views on the Instagram reel the first day. That's huge for a guy like me who doesn't have a social media with YouTube. And so I was really taken back and overwhelmed with the amount of people and responses over it. So it was kind of overwhelming.
So we did have 2 pickups, which is really fun. Steven picked up a Banana and Chi Clown Het Sunset from Brock at Brock Wagner Reptiles, and I got myself a Pastel Spot Nose Acid Het Clown Girl from Josh Lumberg at the Ball Python Shed. So I am super excited about these pickups. I don't know that we will really be able to show them off in here. We might have to move it inside because they're both in quarantine after having come back from the show. But beautiful pickup. Steven's so stoked to be adding another clown Het Sunset to our sunset project. I'm really excited to get Acid, especially Spot Nose and Acid with that Het Clown. She's a really cool animal for us. I was, debating whether we wanted to do a visual clown, but all of our males in the clown project are visual clowns, so I figured a Het Clown Girl wasn't gonna hold us back from anything. So really excited about those pickups. Absolutely beautiful animals.
So even though St. Louis wasn't super successful for us, the question kind of arises, is our reptile shows worth it? And subsequently, how did we do in our other shows? So we had 3 other shows this year that we vended, which I know is not a whole lot. It's not necessarily a good enough sample size to assert any kind of significance. But we had the Reptilian Nation show in Atlanta, Georgia. We had the Rep Today in the North Augusta, South Carolina show, and we ended up doing the Charlotte Repticon.
The first show that we did was Reptilian Nation. That was our most full display case. It was perfect timing for us as far as a lot of hatchlings being out and having taken a lot of meals, but us still having some eggs in the incubator and hatchlings that weren't quite ready yet, so that we would have more animals for later shows in case we did really well at Reptilian Nation. That gave us confidence to book out more shows.
In this show, we ended up doing about 15-ish animals, but almost all of those animals were pet level, which isn't necessarily bad, and it definitely helped us out by reducing the amount of animals to feed. But from this show, I think that we did right around $2,000 to $3,000, and the cost to do the show was about $400. So, in my opinion, I think that that's pretty solid. If we come out with about a $2,500 profit from that show, that is 100% worth it, and I would do shows like that all day long. Moving on to our second show of the year, that was the Reptile Day in North Augusta. So this show is really small, and we know that this show is really small, and it costs like $75 for a table, but it is like 10 minutes from our house. So we don't need a hotel. The travel cost in terms of like gas or food or all of that stuff is pretty much non-existent, and the table cost itself is really, really low. So the North Augusta show is like a very, very much small local show, and really only the people in the immediate area go to it. So we generally set up at the show not expecting to do a whole lot, but our thoughts are if we can sell one animal, we can pretty much break a profit, or break even at least, and it is one less mouth to feed. So this year when we went to it, I think we did 2 animals for a total of about $400, which was pretty solid. It's a day's worth of work, and it's not a whole lot of animals, but it was profitable, and it's super easy to do because it's right by our house. So it's definitely worth it in our opinion for our specific situation.
Last month we did the Charlotte Repticon. That was our best show this season. That might have been our best show. We sold maybe 20 snakes, and we brought in maybe $4,200. So that was a really good show. You know, when you don't have a ton of animals, you know, moving a quarter of them at one show is just really great.
It's a really, really good show, and I highly recommend it. So one of the lessons that we kind of learned from it is that when you're doing like the big regional shows or the national level shows, and you have amazing breeders like Brock Wagner, like Troy from Best Dressed Balls, like Bob Vu, like Josh Lumberg, the competition is really hard and really intense. And essentially, if they are at those shows too, and they left our booth, a customer would leave our booth, it is very, very likely that they were going to find another amazing animal for an amazing price, and there wouldn't be a reason for them to come back because they could get whatever needs that they were trying to meet from one of those other vendors. Now, at the smaller local shows, this isn't to be anything against the people who do vend those shows because they're awesome too, but they don't have the same kind of brand value as Bob Vu or Brock Wagner. So because of that, I find that is actually significantly easier to sell at those shows because with the YouTube channel and with Instagram, we have, when it comes to the local shows, a little bit of a bigger, more public profile than they do. So it helps draw people to our table, and I do think that that helps make sales. So ultimately, what I think when the original topic for this video comes in, is it worth it? Do you need to vend reptile shows in order to have a successful reptile business? I think in most situations, for most people, vending reptile shows is necessary. You can sell animals online, and when it comes to the actual like animals that we sell and like revenue, we sell the majority of our animals online. We sell most of our animals through social media, not even through MorphMarket. Overall recap, I think that vending reptile shows is a must for a new reptile business. You are able to tap into a market that is primed and ready to buy animals, hopefully if the promoters are doing their job well, and you don't necessarily have to rely on building up a social media presence over multiple years. That said, if you do put in the work to market yourself and you do put in the work to make your brand recognizable to the audiences, I do think that you are going to have a better chance at success when you go to reptile shows. And just because it is a national level show like NARBC doesn't necessarily mean that it's automatically going to be better than a local show. And if you're a smaller breeder like us who is newer to the market, sometimes being the big fish in a small pond is definitely the way to go.